Thank you. Can everybody hear?
Yes. Well, I can.
Thumbs up, and Mike, you will do. Right, tonight's going to be split into two halves. The first half of which is going to be talking about what happens when you spill something into your MacBook, and not just your MacBook, the iMac as well. Strange as it may sound, that can happen. The second half is about backups, which of course is relevant, especially when you've decided to throw a cup of coffee over your MacBook. So I'm going to switch over to my iPhone now, and I hope this works. It worked when we tested earlier, and we're going to do a live demonstration of what happens when fluid goes over a MacBook. Don't try this at home. Bear with me just while I flip. And if this works, you will now be seeing a MacBook in a tray. Can you see it, Mike?
Absolutely. I'm disappointed it's not the child's paddling pool that I just described, but it'll do.
Well, we would have done that. Well, we've got a dog's paddling pool, but it's dark out there and it's flipping cold. Anyway, what's going to happen is you've just reached for that glass of water, a cup of coffee, a can of Coke, or any other fluid that's near your Mac, or maybe your MacBook is on the coffee table. The dog's walked by. There's a cup of coffee beside it, and he wags his tail, hits the cup of coffee, and goes straight over your Mac. This is going to tell you what to do. Now, when I say don't try this at home, I really mean don't try this at home. And if you don't believe I'm not prepared to do this, well, there it goes. Oh dear, I've just spilt a pint of water or thereabouts in my precious ancient MacBook Air. What do? You pick it up like that to start with. Jeff, if you could dump that carefully for me. Lovely. So the first thing you do, pick it up, and if it was plugged in, make sure you take the charger out. Very first thing, take that charger out. Try and mop up as much water as you can. As he says, looking for the kitchen roll that I prepared earlier. See, my glamorous assistant has already told me where it is. Wipe off the excess. Don't have to be gentle about it. Just wipe off as much as you can quickly. Now, if you're not competent with taking the things apart, what you should do next is what we call A-frame it. Stick it up like that. And we're going to open this up in a moment, and I'll show you why you should A-frame it and not just turn it upside down or just put it in the airing cupboard. So we'll turn that back over. And no, you're not going to watch me undo all of the screws, because this is something we partly prepared earlier. So we'll take out the last remaining screws. If you've got the right tools and you are competent, not if you believe you are competent, but if you actually are competent, then feel free to turn it over and take it apart. The sooner you get these things apart to dry out, the better. As you'll see later on, just putting them in the airing cupboard is never enough. Now, you can see, I hope in there, you might be able to see that.
Yep.
Water inside there already. This actually isn't looking as bad as I was expecting, but you've got more water on the bottom of the battery, and dare say it, more water under the keyboard. Having taken the bottom off, the next thing you want to do is to unplug the battery. More damage will occur if the machine has still got power to it than ever will if you can disconnect the power. Pop out another screw. Should be the last one. And there's a small amount of water on that battery there on the inside. Just chucking the bits out of the way. And can we see anything on here? Not really. Well, there's just water inside there. You might be able to see that. It's probably difficult to see it, but there is water in there. There's water beading here as well. It's all coming through the keyboard. The reason for A-framing it, that's it open, is that on all of the Macs, you have got the battery at the front edge. The electronics, the logic board and the disk drive are all at the back. So when you do that with it, you're letting the water drop towards the battery. Some people would say don't let water near the batteries. The lithium batteries are pretty well sealed, and it's very, very unlikely that you'll get any water inside them. I've yet to come across one. That's what you would do initially. If you've got time, the tools, the ability, the competence, the next thing you need to do is to remove the disk drive, the logic board, take everything out, pat it dry. If you haven't got all the kit I've got here, you then need to put it in the airing cupboard. You can put it in a bag with some rice. That will help. The rice will take some of the moisture out. It does help, but just leaving the thing together, clamped up like that, is a disaster in the making. I guarantee you, sooner or later, that Mac will completely and utterly fail. Right. What you should be doing is taking the machine to somebody who is competent. You really need to get it to somebody who knows what they're doing, seen it before. I'll just show you two other Macs, two newer Macs. That one's a very, very early MacBook Air. This is a 2017 MacBook Pro. And as you can see, this is the front edge. This is the front edge here. Here's the battery. Yet again, it's at the front edge. The electronics is all at the back again. And in this particular one, you've got a solid state disk in there, main logic board, fan. That's it. So you A-frame it again in the same way. One last example, and this is a 15-inch MacBook Pro 2012 or thereabouts. It's got a solid state disk in it. It would originally have come with an ordinary hard disk. Again, this is the front edge where the disk and the battery is. You A-frame it again, you keep it so that you keep the water off the main logic board, off the electronics. It's the electronics that will take the damage. Just a note on this one, you may think the battery looks a bit strange. Just as an aside, I'll show you why. If it'll come out again, it has a problem with gas.
I know the feeling.
It's gassed so much it's got itself jammed in. And yeah, the rest of the MacBooks had it anyway. The reason I'm showing this to you is, just an aside while it's here, this battery has swollen up. That's the actual battery pouches inside it. They have gassed, which they will do with age. So they start to split the battery case. That's then enough to push the base off and actually rip past the screws that hold it on. And a lot of the time, they swell here as well, which is where the trackpad is. So you'll end up with a trackpad that starts to protrude through the case. Not a lot you can do other than taking the bottom of the case off. It looks dangerous. It's not. I've had them come up like this. I have never actually had one explode. He said, waiting for it to happen right before your very eyes. Right, we're going to move on a bit now. I'm going to go. I don't want to dart about cameras too much, so briefly into the disk drive side of things. This is a solid state disk that actually came out of a Mac Pro. They're very similar in the MacBook Pros, in the earlier MacBook Pros. And if you look along, you can see along these edges.
Mark, can you hold it slightly further away? It's miles out of focus.
Better?
It's getting better. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Right, along these edges, the chips, the actual chips that store are the storage are under this label. Now, around the edge of these chips, they're sealed, so they can survive some water damage. A lot of people think they can't, but they can, and I will tell you about how they can and the number that have done it before. With your hard disk, which is this would be a hard disk, a 2.5-inch hard disk out of a MacBook, an earlier MacBook. They're pretty well sealed because they're only allowed to let air in and out, and then only through a filter. So it's very difficult for water to get inside them. So the bottom line with these are, if you've got one of those, or you've got the SSD I've just shown you, you have a chance of saving your data. Now, there's one SSD, which is the downside to that, and it's the third-party aftermarket ones. If you take the bottom off, there's no seal there. When you get to these chips, there's no sealant around the chips that actually store the data. If you get water under there, it will quickly, very quickly corrode, and it will be virtually impossible to get your data back. Right, I'm going to try and switch back to the normal screen now. So I'll stop that share and start another one. Here we go, I hope.
Yep.
Right, you're seeing my background?
Yep.
Okay. Right, we need to do now, just going through the bits and pieces. Right, I'm going to show you some of the things that have really happened. And as luck would have it, I say as luck would have it for me, I've had one laptop, not a MacBook, but one laptop brought in this very week with tea spilled in it. And I'm going to get on to disaster recovery later on, which has happened to another client. Just cautionary tales. You really don't want this to happen. I need to get screen sharing back. Where's that gone? Oh, it's the, sorry. I want the, there we go. The damage. Right, let's start this off. And that's got the screens the wrong way around. I'm going to share. Bear with me for a moment. I'm going to share the other screen. And it's exit. It's right. I've got two screens running and it's shared the wrong screen. I've lost my pointer, which is on the wrong one. Back to that. Sorry about this. Desktop 2. Share that. That means I need to get rid of this. That's the one I want. Let's try that again.
Gotcha.
Right, are you seeing that now?
Yes, yes.
Right, let me go back to the first slide and get rid of something that's in the way. That's not the first slide. That's the first slide. Right. If you look at this one here, this is a Lenovo laptop. It doesn't matter that it's a PC-based laptop. Whether it's PC, MacBook, anything, they all suffer from the same basic problems if you throw fluid in them. They don't like to work anymore. What you're looking at here, this brown tinge you can see there, that's tea. Now that's tea still on this laptop, which was brought to me just under 12 hours after it happened. And it was switched off at the time, and the lady did put it in the airing cupboard, but an airing cupboard for 11, 12 hours after it's had tea spilt into the side of it is not enough. You can also see there's some fluid result there on the fan. Now we took the board out to have a look, and again, if you look here, you can still see that that's tea. I could put my finger on that and feel it, and it will mop up. And you've already got over here some corrosion. So that's coming already. It doesn't take long for these things to corrode. Different area of the board again, and again, you have got tea corrosion, and that's, I was going to say the watermark, but it's really the tea mark of where the tea was. Same again here. You've got some corrosion coming down there. There's tea there. There's tea there. It didn't get everywhere, but it got in enough places to be a problem. What the lady did wrong was to try and switch it on. The tea went across the laptop while it was switched off. She mopped it up and then switched it on and said, oh, it worked for a couple of minutes, and then the screen went blank. And at that point, she pulled the plug and switched and took it up to the airing cupboard. What she shouldn't have done was to switch it on. That was a potential disaster at that point. Now, what you're looking at here, see that there, this is under my microscope. That's corrosion within 12 hours. So what we have to do with that, or what any other repair place should be doing with that, is you open the machine up, take it out, you dry it up as best you can. Then you have to clean that corrosion off. And this is just the first pass at cleaning. You'll rarely get away with doing it just once. You usually do it and then you have a look at it again, and there's still a small amount of corrosion in here, which you then wipe a second time. You spray it with printed circuit board cleaner a second time and try and get rid of all the corrosion. Sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't. The trouble with the modern electronics is you cannot get underneath the chips, so you don't know whether you've sprayed enough to get rid of anything that's underneath. That was the T one. That's the one that came in this week. We did repair it. We did clean it up enough. We did get it going. No data was lost, and she is immensely grateful. Whether she'll be immensely grateful when she sees the bill, that's another story. But that one was switched off, so you've got a better chance. She almost lost the better chance by switching it back on again. This one, on the other hand, is from a 2012 Retina MacBook Pro 15-inch, which was switched on at the time when a glass of water went beside it. Not quite as bad as the pint I've just poured onto this one, but not far off it. What you can see in here, you can see, these are the pins to the trackpad. This is on the actual logic board itself. So this is on that main logic board at the back that I showed you earlier. And you can just see these pins should all be gold, nice and shiny gold. That one's not. That one's not anymore. So now if we go to the next picture, and the next slide is the actual ribbon cable that comes from the trackpad and connects into the logic board. And on that, you can see where it's not just corroded, it's burnt, and it's burnt there as well. So the ribbon cable would need replacing, and because of the damage on the logic board needed replacing as well. It couldn't be cleaned. It's beyond cleaning at this point. But the biggest thing that got me, which I haven't seen before until this one, is you've got corrosion here, here, and signs of melting. This is the video connector. This connects up to your display on your MacBook. But the thing that really got me is if you look here, this and this are plastic. But it's not plastic that should be there or in that state. That plastic has melted. Because there's your gold connector. There should be a nice, sharp, defining edge of plastic along there to insulate. But in this instance, There's so much current passed through there because of the water that it's melted the connector, and it's melted them together. We couldn't pull the cable out of the socket. So this is, again, this is the main logic board again, and this end is the cable that goes up to your display. So that logic board is toast. It's gone. You're never going to be able to repair that. That's one of the worst ones I've seen.
Mark's, a couple of questions appeared in the chat.
Yeah.
Can I throw them at you? John Prescott, would you like to unmute and ask about A-frames? John?
Yeah.
John?
Hi, Mark. How can you actually A-frame a laptop without opening it and turning it on?
With the modern laptops, with the new ones, unless you've set them not to automatically turn on, you cannot. All you can do is to open them up and press the power button and hope you can turn the thing off completely. But bearing in mind that none of these laptops, whether it's a MacBook or something else, is actually truly switched off. Very, very few pieces of equipment these days has a proper switch. Most of them are powered on to some degree all the time. All of your MacBooks, even when you've told it to shut down, has still got power onto the logic board from the battery, because that switch that you press is not a full on-off switch. It doesn't cut the current completely. It's sitting there with the system waiting to see the key pressed. And if it's got to see the key pressed and wait for it, there's got to be some power to do that. In a perfect world, you would A-frame it. If you've got to that point and you've got to make your own decision, then do I A-frame it and try and make sure it doesn't come on? Or do you leave it closed, maybe just try and open it a little bit and use some kitchen rolls, some kitchen towels I did earlier, pop it in there as quickly as you possibly can, and then just hold it up vertically so that you've got the keyboard edge, the trackpad edge, actually pointing down. That's the best thing you can do. The downside of doing that is because it's not A-framed, you risk getting water into the display. It's a tricky situation, and I do understand where you're coming from. It is possible to stop that system from working. You can actually tell it that you do not want it to automatically switch on every time you open the lid. There is a terminal command from that, which I'll try and remember to go into later, so that you can actually turn it off if you want. Then it won't switch on again. I have to do that when I repair them, because you don't want to be disconnecting batteries while it's switched on. Does that help? It's not the best answer, but it's a tricky one.
Yes, thanks, Mark. I mean,
sorry.
The best bet perhaps would be to get the back off as soon as possible.
It would be, if you can get the back off, yeah, and then it can drain that way. Plus, you can disconnect the battery. Even with the newer ones, you can still unplug the battery. Although they're often held together, there's usually a screw now. The batteries, the earlier ones, the batteries were plugged in. The later ones, they have a metal flap with a big screw that goes into the logic board. So you need a small screwdriver, such as the one you saw me using to open the MacBook up with.
Thanks, Mark. It's great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sheeta, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
It's all gone quiet.
Sheeta, she was having problems with sound earlier, so I'll ask on her behalf. Sheeta just asked if you could recommend a circuit board cleaner.
It's well, the one I use is Ambersil PCB cleaner. Whether it's, I'm assuming it's available in the States as well as over here. Doing what I do, of course, I've got sizable quantity of the stuff.
PCB?
Yeah, PCB, as in printed circuit board cleaner.
Sheeta, is your mic not working? That's clearly a no. So, we can't hear you. Oh, yes, not. Is it a spray?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
What you do when you clean these things up, if you do get into this situation, you spray the board with printed circuit board cleaner, and you want a stipple brush, or take an ordinary brush and give it a haircut, so you've got about a centimetre's worth of hair on it, and that makes it quite very stiff, and just rub over the board with that. You'd have to rub very, 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 very hard to start pulling components off. You can rub them quite vigorously without causing any damage. Also, that printed circuit board cleaner will help disperse any water that's underneath the components that you can't get to.
Yeah. Going back to what you said earlier, Andrew Coleman's just posted, participating in the Find My network means that Apple Silicon devices never actually truly fully shut down, which you discussed earlier. Matt George says, does the viscosity of the liquid, i.e. water vis-a-vis tea, coffee, milk, wine, make a difference?
We'll come on to that later.
Okay. Should you ever use compressed air after that?
You can, but you really, really need to clean it, and it's better if you just let it dry naturally. The trouble with the compressed air is you can actually push the fluid underneath another component.
Oh, yeah.
So you may just move the problem rather than curing it.
How about, gosh, everybody's talking. John Staplehurst, how about isopropyl alcohol as a cleaner?
Yes, you can. That it won't cause any harm. It's just that the printed circuit board cleaner is designed specifically to clean these boards.
Great.
John Sharman, what about the old WD-40? Is that
No! Don't put it near. It may disperse the water, but it'll cause all sorts of other issues.
Right, that's it for questions for the moment, Marcus. All yours. Once you've recovered.
Yeah, heart attack time. Okay. Yes, this was a disaster, a very expensive disaster. Luckily for the chap involved, he had it insured. But the cost of the parts exceeded the cost of a new Mac. That's just another shot of small connector on the other side of the board that I think that's a speaker connector. This one's a slightly unusual case. This isn't the title up there says MacBook Air after rain shower. I promise you, that's not actually a modern MacBook Air. It's just the DCN board. It's just one part of it. Now, this belonged to a schoolgirl, and her MacBook Air was closed up, switched off, and it was in her school bag. Now, the school had hockey match on, and all of the kids were told to take their bags with them. I don't know why they do this, but they do. And go out onto the field and play hockey. Well, they did, but unfortunately, while they were playing, it rained. Nobody thought about the number of computers that are inside bags, iPads and everything else. No, it didn't. It rained fairly heavily, not ridiculously so. And when she got home with it, she took her MacBook out, and what I was told was it was dry. It didn't even feel damp. So they tried to fire it up, and it did start up, but then it misbehaved. So they switched it off, and 2 days later, I got a call. Can you have a look at it? And they explained what had happened, which is good. I'm glad they told the truth, because not everybody does. So we tried to fire it up, and it didn't want to know. Opened it up, and initially didn't really see anything. It's very difficult to spot anything until we started taking it apart. So we've got the DCN board, and we've got the actual DCN connector here. This is an earphone connection. And on that corner there, there's some corrosion. It started to go green. And if you look really carefully, there's some more here. But there's also some down here, which is actually part of the connection from the DCN board to the battery. Then we got further onto the logic board, and there was a little bit here and there on the logic board. The problem was, though, it was just bad luck that the logic board took some corrosion somewhere that we couldn't get to, we couldn't see. We cleaned it, we dried it, re-cleaned it, dried it again, put it back together, and there's no way that MacBook was ever going to work again. As a consequence, they've ended up buying another MacBook Air. They didn't have any choice, but they are taking it up with the school, because technically it's the school's fault. They should not have had their bags out on the field in the rain, knowing that most of the children there will have, most of the kids in school these days seem to have their own iPads or MacBooks or a laptop of some description. But that was a surprise to find so little obvious damage in here, and only to discover it's a disaster, a total disaster. It happens. It just shows that it doesn't take much. Right, pointer's on the wrong page again. Get rid of that one. Yeah, you saw the keyboard. Some of these things can survive when you throw water over the top of the keyboard, because underneath that keyboard there is a membrane. And 9 times out of 10, if you get water in the keyboard, the keys start to go sticky, regardless of whether it's water or something else. Some of the keys don't want to work. Sometimes your MacBook will continue to function. You can change the keyboards. They are changeable. What you've got the keyboard on the top that you can see. Underneath that, you then have a very thin plastic circuit board, effectively, which has got traces on it, so it's conductive in places, in the right places. Under that, there is then a black piece of plastic with some LEDs in it. Now, those LEDs on that black plastic are what give you your backlight. Not going to go into how the backlight works. It's not the right place for that at the moment. But that backlight membrane can hold the water to a certain degree. Some MacBooks do it better than others. Some of the early ones are very bad at it. Some of the later ones are much better. Now, there's good and bad in this. The early MacBooks had 50 screws holding the keyboard in, which 50 very, very tiny screws, which take a long time to remove and put back again. So you could pull those out, put a new keyboard in, screw it back in, off it goes. The later ones start to become more awkward. The later MacBook Airs, and I'm not sure what date they started from, probably 2013, 14, they rivet the keyboards in. So they're actually riveted in solid. You can still change them. You can pull the rivets out, and you can buy a packet of screws, which you can then cut thread straight into the upper case and screw the new keyboard in. But it's very laborious. It is a real nightmare to do, and it's very easy to do damage while you try and pull the keyboard out. So they're not so good. Then we come along to the current crop of MacBooks. Wonderful. Not. We've had a look at those, and it's got to the point you cannot change just the keyboard. If you spilt something into it, if the membrane does its job and it doesn't get onto the logic board, the only way to change that keyboard is to change the whole top case, which comes with a new keyboard. So which to me is a backward step. We can't replace them anymore. There's just no way to do it. Or there may be a way to do it, but it's going to cost so much, it's cheaper to replace the top case. But I don't know of anybody at the moment that's trying to replace the keyboards. It's just not worth it. It would take too much time, even if you could do it. Shame. So we're getting more and more built-in obsolescence the further along the line we get, which I find infuriating.
It's a bit galling when they make such a fuss about just how green they are these days, isn't it?
Yeah, that's not green at all. Quite the opposite. They'd be much greener if they would supply the keyboards and say, off you go and replace it. But I pulled one or two apart to look at and just throw my hands up in horror and go, forget it. It's not going to happen. Right. One of the reasons you've got problems with the MacBooks and the laptop, so you saw after 12 hours there was still tea in that machine. You would have thought that having stood it up and left it in an airing cupboard, that would have all trickled out. The reason it doesn't trickle out, and I'll show you some more pictures in a moment to explain that, the reason it doesn't trickle out is capillary action. These modern laptops, everything is so close together, so tight, that if you get a little bit of water in between, it will just get sucked in by capillary action further and further, and it will hold there. It's almost impossible to get that water out. And if you just want to leave it to let it come out, you're going to have to leave it for weeks, and by that time there's so much corrosion, the whole thing is toast. Right, keyboard replacements. Now, before I go on to the show you the other pictures of what's been going on, I'll just go back to some real world examples. These are things I've had to deal with. These are things I've actually seen. One of the worst ones.
Mark, we're seeing, sorry, we're just seeing a blank desktop at the moment.
Yeah, are you seeing me?
No.
Oh. And I wonder what's happened because I've not switched anything off.
I'm seeing Mike at the side in a little.
Yes, I
Yeah,
am.
yeah,
too.
but
I
yes,
can
but
see my
the main window is Ventura desktop.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on a minute. Let me stop the share for the moment.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to nobble the second screen because that's where the problem is. Blank and back, blank and back. Is that better?
So we're seeing you now.
You're seeing me. That's it. That's all you should be seeing at the moment. I just want to talk through this, then I'm going to bring the other slides up. Now the second screen is off. This should work. Yeah, what I had was chap had gone down to Cornwall, bought himself some cider. He had a bottle in his backpack together with his MacBook. And I think you probably know where this is going. He tripped and he heard this horrible crash. Opened his bag up, immediately pulled out the MacBook, covered in cider. He was coming home, didn't know what else to do. So he did bring it straight over here. So he must have been here. It took him about 3 hours from wherever it actually happened to get here. Got it on the bench. It was sticky. Opened it up. It was still sticky. The logic board was already corroded. There was already corrosion on it.
Wow.
It's just the nature of things like cider. That machine was toast instantly. That was it. As soon as the cider had gone on there, within 3 hours, there was enough corrosion, we couldn't do anything with it. Unfortunately, he lost the data as well. That's one of the first where we've seen total data loss together with total MacBook loss. So don't carry a bottle of cider. And in fact, preferably don't carry a bottle of any sort of fluid in with the MacBook. Keep it on its own. We had another instance where I had, this time, a PC laptop came in with some of the keys don't work. And you press the keys and went, oh, they're right. No, some of them don't work. And they feel a bit funny. I wonder what's going on with this. And it didn't tweak straight away. So we plugged in an external keyboard and it worked. External keyboard's fine. Brilliant. Not a problem. Okay, fine. It must be that keyboard. So you take the bottom of the laptop off. When I took the bottom off the laptop off, I went, what's that? I got closer to it, went, chocolate. Hot chocolate. So we turned the laptop back over again, had a closer look in the light, and you could see where it had been very carefully cleaned. The problem with that sort of thing is, they should tell the truth. If you tell the truth, you can immediately go for the problem and you've got a good chance of salvage. Luckily, that we got the hot chocolate out of most of it. Most of it worked. It was just the keyboard, because the keyboard had retained most of that hot chocolate. The lady was lucky, very lucky. It was just a keyboard that needed replacing. It could have been a lot worse. But because this is going back to viscosity, but because the hot chocolate was quite viscous, it had trouble getting through the keyboard onto the rest of the board. So she got lucky. Yeah, we did the tea, and that was switched off. Coffee is very much similar to tea. If you get coffee on the machine, it's going to corrode within a few hours. Similar situation. The sooner you open it up, A-frame it, get it to somebody to strip it down completely and dry it out, the better. Gin and tonic. Now, there's an interesting one. No, I didn't do it. I wouldn't let the gin go near enough, and there's no way I'd waste a good gin and tonic on a MacBook. But we had one of those come in with, again, this was sticky keys, but they told the truth. They brought it in 3 days later and said, we knocked a glass of gin and tonic over. Said, we're not worried about the MacBook, but we lost the gin and tonic. That survived. Sticky keyboard is a bit much, so we opened it up. No sign of corrosion. Changed the keyboard. That MacBook has now worked for 4 years. So you can get lucky. Partly depends on what it is. Now is one of my favorite ones. Coca-Cola. Other brands are available. There's one problem with that. If you throw Coca-Cola over your MacBook, you might as well put it straight in the bin, because that stuff will corrode it in minutes, absolutely minutes. You can prove that yourselves, not with your MacBooks, but with other things. If we did an experiment I remember doing at school. We took an egg, a boiled egg, popped it in a beaker of Coca-Cola, left it there for a week, came back, the shell had been dissolved. There was no shell left. It was just the rest of the egg that was left. It just shows what it can do.
Mark, that used to be an old trick for the old boys years ago for paint stripping on your car. Tip the Coca-Cola over your car and just keep rubbing it in with a cloth, and that will just strip the paint off.
I hadn't heard that one before.
Years ago, when obviously the paints weren't quite so good as what they are nowadays, but many years ago, that was a tried and tested method of stripping your car.
Brilliant. Mark, can I throw a question at you from Matt?
Yes, of course.
Is it safe to use moist cleansing wipes to clean a grubby keyboard, or does capillary action draw any faint moisture into the body of the computer and cause corrosion?
No, the moist cleansing wipes will be absolutely fine.
Thank you.
And actually, with most of the cleansing wipes, they don't have water in them anyway.
Martin says he puts his kids' baby teeth in Coca-Cola and they dissolved in a week. I hope he refers to the teeth rather than the kids, but...
Well, we'll just think of it this way. They must be dissolving you from the inside like that.
Yes. Okay, that's. I think that clears up all the questions at the moment. So carry on.
Nice one. Yeah, I've got notes. Things like orange juice and the such, like pure orange juice, same as Coca-Cola. If you get that in it, you're going to be very, very, very lucky if you can salvage anything. It's basically toast. It's going to corrode it to nothing. I've got one unusual thing here. I have people say that it'll only ever happen to MacBooks. It can't happen to an iMac. Actually, it can. I have seen somebody trip and throw a cup of tea over an iMac. As luck would have it, it just hit the screen, dispersed, and went sideways. Depends on the angle you hit it at, but it could still happen. But you're not going to be able to A-frame that one. There's not really much you can do with it. Whichever direction you hang it in, it's going to get something. But there is a bigger problem with iMacs, which I came across 3-4 years ago. I was called out to an iMac which wouldn't switch on. So I brought it into the workshop, had a look, couldn't figure out what was going as it was, started to strip it down and tested it and found the logic board was faulty. And there was some residue on the logic board, which was a bit strange because I couldn't figure out where the residue came from. And I wasn't sure whether that had anything to do with it. So we still cleaned it up, popped the logic board back in again, still wouldn't start. So we ordered a new logic board, fitted that, off it went. took it back to the lady, quite happy with it. 4 months later, I got a call again. The iMac won't switch on. And this time I went over there to have a proper look. And the clue was the lady did some vaping. She'd given up smoking and decided to do vaping instead. And her bottles of vaping stuff was on a shelf just above where her 27-inch iMac was. And the first reaction to that is you've knocked something over, and it's no, nothing had been knocked over. So we took the iMac back into the workshop, turned it around to the back, and could touch the back of it and could feel something sticky on it going down to the fan, because there's a fan in the back of the iMacs. You've got a grill there where the fan is, and it sucks in air. And we looked at this, thought, well, what's going on with this? Pulled the front off, had a careful look at the logic board, and could see a trace of something coming down again. Touched it, and it's sticky, and it smelt very sweet. In fact, the sweet smell was the smell I got in the house while she was vaping, and that's what gave us the clue. Turns out she's been sitting in front of the Mac for hours at a time vaping, and this vapor had gone over the top of the Mac and been sucked in through the fan, and then it had coalesced on the board, and the longer you did it, the more it did that, and until eventually this stuff trickled down onto the board and blew the board up again. She doesn't vape when she's in front of the iMac anymore. Just a strange word of warning. If any of you out there do vape a lot, think about what that vapor might be doing to something else. And it could do the same to your MacBook. If you can get into the iMac, you can get into the MacBook. Right, I'm going to go back to sharing the screen, hopefully the right one this time. Desktop 1. And I keep forgetting to hit the share button. Right, are you seeing background? Right, let's bring up the next set of slides. Off we go. Right, are you seeing the inside of a damp MacBook Air?
Yep.
Could be, yep. There's a fluid. And this I have shown you all before very, very briefly, just expanding on what's been done before. This is a MacBook Air that was brought to us with a glass of water in it, and it was brought to us the same day it happened. So it happened in the morning, it got over to us within about 3 to 4 hours. So you've got, you can see the outline in the bottom case of where the battery is. So that's the front edge of the MacBook. This is the back edge. Here's the battery again, front edge. You can see water there. Here, it's over there. There is a rather large amount of water there. There, it's, as you can see, it got a full glass. It was done properly. That's the battery having been removed and turned over. So this is the underside of the battery, and you can see where the water is being trapped. Over there, it's dripped here. And there's a strange thing here, and they're not a pair of red spider's eyes or bug's eyes of any description. They should be white. In the later MacBooks, and it's not just in MacBooks, laptops as well, the manufacturers are putting little discs inside. Those discs are normally white. If there's any fluid got onto them, they turn red. So if you ever have a spillage in a new MacBook and you take it to the Apple store and say it's just died, and they open it up and see red, they will tell you it's died because you've thrown something liquid in it. Go away. I don't know when they started doing that, but it's quite recent. It's a nice idea. I personally like it because if somebody tells me it's just stopped working, you open it up and you see they're red, you know why it stopped working, because they've spilt something in it. Even if you can't see the result of the actual fluid, you know something's gone in it. Right, that was where the battery was, and you can still see this is the water. Now, I was talking about capillary action. That's what's holding this water in here. So we still haven't pulled the logic board out yet. Now, this was talking about the disk drive earlier on, and that the fact that there's tend to be sealed. You can just see around the edge there, light black sealant. You can see it go round there, and it's all the way around. These four are the actual chips that make up the solid state disk. And if you look here, this piece here, that's where there's some water. Now, if this seal wasn't in place, that water would have been underneath the disk. And you've got it here as well. There we go. Look, more water in there, but you can see the sealant coming off the edge of the chips. You can see it's just doing that, nice and smooth. This end here is the actual connection. That's where the disk plugs into the motherboard. If you look up here, you can see corrosion has formed on there. And you've got the start of corrosion over in this area. And this is only after a few hours. There's a lot of water there. That is where your solid state disk plugs in, and the disk that you saw went across here and was screwed down there. This is the water underneath the disk. There is no way that that water is going to evaporate and not leave any sort of damage within a few hours. It's going to take days, if not weeks, for that to go away. And by that time, it's way too late. Way too late. This did survive. Because it was brought to us quickly, we were able to clean it up. Now you can see, again, there's the normal corrosion. Corrosion from the water, same as you saw with the tea. And there's some on the keyboard connector here. And we've still got water on that keyboard connector. Water there with corrosion. One of the biggest problems with these is you don't tend to clean the whole board. It's not practical to do every last bit of the board. Not from my perspective. If it's your own and you've got hours to spare, by all means, go ahead and spend the time doing that. We can't do that. And price it out of existence. Excuse me. And I will be careful with this. So that is the logic board removed. This, with some water on it still, is the black membrane with the keyboard backlight. You can see each one of these ones is a white LED. And there's a circuit board there stuck to that membrane. That's how you get your backlight. But this is sealed down here. You can see that is actually stuck down onto the MacBook there and across there. It's not stuck down at that point. That is actually open, and so is that. So it's not a perfect seal, but it can sometimes be enough to save the system. That was it. It'll come out of that. And that was the picture of your classic A-frame when possible. So the main thing with any of this is, if it does happen, speed is of the essence. You have got to be quick with it. The longer you leave it, the worse it gets, the less likely you are to be able to save anything, either data or the MacBook itself. If you do take it somewhere, for goodness sake, tell the person you're taking it to the truth. Don't be embarrassed about it. It happens. I've seen it happen to all sorts of people. I've come close myself, but I've never done it. Let's put the kibosh on it. No doubt tomorrow I'm going to spill something. So it's speed. But best of all, don't do it. Don't put a drink close enough to do it. Don't put something above on the shelf just above it. That's always a disaster waiting to happen. And don't forget, it's not always you. The thing I said about the dog walking past and wagging his tail, that's not just a joke, that's happened. And it's not just dogs. Children, small children are some of the worst. We did have one of those where a small child had knocked a cup of coffee across and the owner had wiped it and it didn't go over the top of the keyboard, and they said it didn't go inside it. We actually got it 2 weeks later because it wouldn't, the Wi-Fi wouldn't connect anymore. We took it apart and said, we smelt it and it's, oh, there's coffee inside. Well, really? Well, didn't spill any in it. Then she explained what had happened. And I could show them the parts and the corrosion that was on it. We managed to clean it and put a new Wi-Fi card and it worked. But that's all it takes. A small child, a dog, cats are one of the favorites for knocking things over, especially the ones that like to sit on the keyboards. And that's never a good thing either. Are there any more questions regarding the spin?
There is. Chris Frank, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, you mentioned paper towels have been the best thing to clean, I think I heard you say earlier. What about a cotton towel?
Yeah, absolutely fine. It's not just that the paper towels aren't necessarily the best. They're just what people tend to have around.
Yeah.
Loo
Yeah,
roll will do it as well.
I was thinking the paper bits of paper might fall apart, and you know you get bits.
They don't usually. You'd only use it on the outside. You would never use it on the inside because it's going to catch on things and tear, and you get bits of paper everywhere. Just use it on the outside, on the key, to try and absorb as much from the keyboard as you possibly can.
What do you use on the inside then? What do you use on the inside?
On the inside, you would basically want to just let as much fluid drain naturally as possible. And then you want to use the circuit board cleaning to help disperse the water. If you've got so much water in there that it's causing a real headache, you can use the paper towel, but you don't want to do a scrubbing motion. Just push it against the board and
just
then
dab it. Just dab it like you do if you spilt red wine on a carpet. You don't want to.
Yeah, dabbing it's the way to do it.
Thank you.
That's it, Mark. It's all yours. Thank you.
Right. I've just remembered one other story, which is funny and not funny at the same time before I go on to the backups. We did have MacBook brought into us, which was more than a spillage this time. And it was full of rice when we got it. And it was for a student who was at university and in the middle of doing their dissertation. And of course, they were in a panic. Is there any chance you can retrieve the data off this? And it was an SSD. So we opened the thing up to find rice everywhere, corrosion everywhere. We pulled the disk out and I managed to bridge some of the contacts on the end of the disk that plugs into a board to be able to plug it into something else, and we got the data off. But the funny thing was how it happened. We did ask, we said, how did you do this? There's so much, you obviously got so much water in this. To which the answer was, well, I was listening to music while I was in the bath. The MacBook had been on the windowsill beside the bath and he decided to change tunes, touched the keyboard, and the MacBook joined him in the bath. So it's not just things going over it, and it's not just people being silly. It's just, why would you have your MacBook in the bathroom? But there we go. He was a student. Need I say more? Any more questions?
Brilliant. Nope, time to move on, I think.
Right. On to my favorite subject. And you should find this one more relevant than normal. Backing up. Why should you back up? Okay.
Oh, sorry, Mark, before you continue, we're staring at a desktop again. Do you want to cut back to you? Or are you back to share slides?
No, I've got no more slides. I'm glad you reminded. I'd forgotten.
No worries.
It's an age thing. Okay. Now that you can see me again, where was I? Who am I? Oh yes, backing up. Why would you back up? Well, to start with, your Mac gets stolen. Someone's trodden on it. And now don't laugh, don't laugh. I've seen it. I've seen the results of it. I've seen the result of one child standing on another child's MacBook to help them reach the top shelf. Yeah, they piled a load of things up. The MacBook was the last thing, which was thick enough just to give them a toe up. A driven over Mac. Yeah, I've seen it. A driven away Mac. Now that sounds a strange, right? No, that's called put it on the roof of the car while you sort the children out, get back in your car, drive off. Oh dear, what's that thing that's just gone down? It's your MacBook that's gone bouncing down the road. A dropped Mac. Fluid spillage is our speciality. And the last one I've got on my list is forgotten your password with an encrypted disk. These are all some basic reasons why you should or must back up. Let's not say should, you must back up. You have got to back the thing up. Right. One of the things I'm coming across quite a bit these days is this idea, this rather nice, it can't happen anymore idea with the modern Macs. Earlier Macs came with mechanical hard disk. And if it got dropped, well, you could destroy the disk. Quite literally. The 2.5-inch discs that were in the MacBooks have glass platters and they have a magnetic coating. Now it's possible for those glass platters to smash. And in fact, if I can reshare the camera rather than the screen, I can show you one that was prepared by a customer quite some time ago now. Here we go. There we go. Now, this is a 2.5-inch disk drive taken out of that particular MacBook that's had the lid removed, and I put a piece of plastic over to stop the shards of glass from falling out. What you've got here, there should be two platters, one here, one below, and one above. They're glass with a magnetic coating. This here is the read-write head to read and write the data, which flips across the surface of the disk. It doesn't touch it, it's just a few nanometers above the surface. But I hope you can see there's an edge there and an edge there, and hopefully you can see a few shards of the disk. That's destroyed. There's nothing any data recovery company can ever do with that one. It's toast. And the problem with that, let me stop the share again. The lady in question had no backup, and that particular MacBook was on the arm of a sofa playing some iTunes music at the time, and she just turned around and knocked it with her elbow, just gone like that. So it ended up on a carpeted floor. That was the result. That was extremely bad luck, but it's what can happen. And that's an extreme case of why you need to back up. iMacs, the 27-inch iMacs have, or still have in the main, a 3.5-inch hard disk, which is bigger than that one. And the discs are actually made of aluminium. But the 21.5-inch iMacs have in them, or did have in them, again, a laptop hard drive. And again, the thing with all of these things is you need to be gentle with them. Banging your MacBook down when it's switched on is asking for problems with the disk. The same thing, and I've seen this happen with an iMac. It's on the desk and it's over there, and they've decided to drag it closer. Well, when they drag it closer, that foot that's on the bottom there sticks to the desk. And so the whole Mac goes across by disk, unless you're lucky. No backup, you've lost it all. The newer Macs, you either have a newer Mac with a solid state disk that's plugged in, as you saw with the wet book Air we were showing, or they have a solid state disk which is actually soldered directly onto the main logic board. As a lot of people think it's solid state, so it's more reliable. Yes, it is more reliable, but do not fall into the trap of thinking it's infallible. It is not. We have had some solid state disks fail, and at that point, it's very, very difficult to get the data back. If you've got the solid state disk that will plug in, you have a chance of taking that off either to someone like myself, or if it's too far gone to a specialist, you may get the data back. If you've got the later MacBooks where it's all soldered to the logic board, you are going to have a devil of a job getting anything done. And it really is specialist data recovery time, if even they can do it. And I don't know if they can yet. If they can't, I'm sure they're working on it. But the thing you mustn't think is that you don't need to back up anymore. You do. Even if you've got the modern solid state disks and it's more reliable, less likely to cause a problem, less likely to go wrong. The things I've listed earlier on, such as your Mac being stolen, trodden on, dropped, thrown around, children jumping up and down on it, dog peeing on it, those things can still cause you data loss. If you haven't got a backup, you've still lost it. You really, really need to back up. I've seen too many horror stories, and I've had people in tears that have lost things because it's just too far gone. And the classic one is, I started to back up this morning and then it all failed. You have got to back up. Now, backup options. I'm not going to go into particular programs. This is just a generic, general. These are your options. These are your basic options. The easy option is the built-in time machine. It works well. You need to you can either plug in an external hard drive to your machine and it'll say, do you want to use it for time machine backups? The answer is yes. Let it get on with it. It will then back up your machine. It'll back up everything. Backs up the operating system, all of your settings, and all of your data. On the modern operating system on Ventura, you can decide how often you want it to back up or whether you want to just back up manually. The earlier versions backed up once an hour, whether you wanted it to or not, unless you fiddled with it and tweaked with it or got hold of some tools that could do it for you. But that's a nice, easy one. It's simple. It's there. There are other third-party products out there which will do pretty much the same job. You pays your money, you takes your choice. Use whatever you're happy with. Another good way of doing it is a cloud-based backup. And I say that's a good way of doing it simply because it means your backup is not with your Mac. The downside of the local backup, the disk that plugs in, is it's with the Mac all the time. If, for example, you left that on the desk and you walked away from it, and you had burglars come in and you've got the MacBook with the disk plugged in, the burglars are definitely going to take your MacBook. They may or may not take your backup disk with it. So if you've backed up onto a disk where the MacBook can be stolen with the disk, it makes your backup pointless. The cloud-based system means that even if the MacBook's gone, your data's still on the cloud system, you'll still get it back. There is a simple solution. If you leave the Mac on a desk downstairs, unplug the backup disk and put it in a different room. The burglar's not going to go hunting around for your backup disk. He's going to grab what he can see. He's not going to go looking for things. So that's still a safe way of doing it. The downside, even if you do that, is if you end up with floods and fire and such like, but that really is getting a bit morbid. All sorts of cloud sites do backups. I've noticed recently that Dropbox have been doing a backup system as well. I have to say my experience of that one is not terribly good. And the reason for that is it tends to shove things around. It moves things around on the system. It doesn't leave them alone. I don't agree with the backup system that messes with things. It should be transparent. I won't go into the story of what was going on with that because it's way too complex, but it did cause some headaches.
Andrew Coleman New member here, and he joined us yesterday. Hello, Andrew, and you're very welcome. And thanks for participating. He's just recommended Backblaze in chat, and I know for a fact I have several professional colleagues who rely on Backblaze for their cloud backups. So if you're interested in learning more about that, Andrew has very kindly popped the web address in the chat. So don't forget to save the chat before you leave the meeting if you'd like that information. Thanks, Mark.
Oh, it's all right. No, it's good. It's good. If anybody else has got any up there, if they want to pop them up and let people know what you use, some others may find it useful. It's really a case of you pays your money or not and takes your choice.
Yeah.
One of the simplest backup mediums, as we used to do with, for those who can remember them, floppy disks, is to quite literally copy the file from your working machine onto an external drive or somewhere else, a network drive, for example. Just copy it. It's just that the automatic systems just make life easier, and you don't have to think, did I back that file up? You're not worrying about it. It just happens. It does it. One very, very, very quick note on iCloud. iCloud is not a backup medium. That's not what it's for. It can feel like it's that, but that's not what it's there for. It's really there to make your life easier so you can share things. Don't rely on it as a backup medium, because it will only actually have a copy of, if you set it in settings of your desktop and your documents, it will have your pictures if you're using it for that anyway. But if you put files anywhere else, if you put your own music, for example, in your music folder, that's not going to iCloud. You'd have to copy that up there manually to make sure. So please don't use iCloud, or don't think you're using iCloud just as a backup system. It's not. Backup types. There's the normal type of backup, which is what we call incremental, i.e. it will back up once every X minutes, X hours, or X days, or whatever you want. It will back up any new files you add, and it will back up any files you change. So it won't back up everything every time. Let's face it, if you've got a terabyte drive and you're using 900 gigabytes, you wouldn't want it backing up 900 gigabytes every time. It would take too long and occupies too much space. Time Machine does the incremental backup. So it does the full backup the first time, then it will just back up any files you change or any files you add to it. And it also means you can then go back and pick up that deleted file that you deleted yesterday that you created 10 weeks ago. So it's quite a good system. The other backup system, and I think for most people it's not necessary, is the bootable clone. It will quite literally back up your whole internal disk to an external disk, and you can then boot from the external disk. Most people don't need to be able to boot immediately from a disk. Most people can spend the time restoring actually, and from things like Time Machine, generally speaking, takes an hour or two, unless you've got huge amounts of data. It's quite quick. It's quite quick at coming back again. And it also makes it easier to transfer to a new Mac. You can use the migration assistant, but you can also use Time Machine to migrate to another Mac. Have I missed anything? I must have missed something.
So Liz and in fact, Liz and I think we must have been typing at the same time, but I rely on Carbon Copy Cloner
Yes,
and a couple of SSDs
yeah.
Here,
Yeah.
which obviously I don't store with my Mac. So
no, the other way to back up is to use a NAS drive, which you plug into your network. And with that, if it's plugged into your network, it doesn't have to be next to the Mac. It could be anywhere in the building, so long as it's got a network connection. It's like the old time capsules. It's that sort of arrangement. That's quite versatile. Again, it protects against the thief and the such like, but it won't protect against fire unless you buy a fireproof NAS drive, which you can get. But believe me, they're not cheap. We have installed one or two to one or two paranoid people, which I think was over the top, but if that's what they want, that's what they get.
John Staplehurst just said he uses Time Machine backing up to a remote NAS.
Yep, perfect. Perfect. Any other questions? Because I think I've pretty much covered what I've intended to cover.
Andrew Coleman says, I recommend keeping a reference volume in addition to an incremental backup.
A reference as in an occasional snapshot.
I assume so.
Yeah.
Andrew, anything you'd like to say about that?
That's exactly right. I'll tell you about in 2011, I somehow accidentally deleted a large number of files with incremental backups. And I recall Time Machine is once every hour, once every past 7 days, once every month, however long. Eventually, whatever you've accidentally deleted that you don't realize you've deleted will disappear. And that's true for all sorts of incremental backup services. So having a reference volume where essentially nothing ever is deleted and it's kept separate, hopefully prevents that issue from happening. If you use a service like Backblaze, they have essentially an infinite version history, so nothing is ever deleted, but that naturally comes with an additional cost.
Yeah, that makes sense.
David Hawkins, I have an 8 terabyte drive which has 4 terabytes spare. Can I partition that drive and use that for a 2 terabyte Time Machine?
Yes.
I can I?
Yes.
Yeah, right, good. Thank you.
So can you forgive my ignorance, but so is it perfectly safe to partition a drive that's actually half full of stuff?
Perfectly safe? No. Reasonably safe? Yes.
Right.
When you're doing anything with partitions, you have to be careful. You cannot repartition just anything. It depends on the system, how it's done, and where the data is.
Right.
Right.
So
Thank you.
it can be done, but with care.
All right, but we'll be very careful.
Yes. If you get to that if in doubt moment, don't.
Don't.
All right, okay, yeah, good. I'll
Sheeta
remember
says,
that.
Sheeta says, I have a question about Time Machine access. Sheeta, is your mic working now?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hooray.
Okay, I have to briefly tell you, I'm on my MacBook Air, which has Ventura on it, and what my iPhone and my computer were doing was this new continuity thing where the microphone was actually flipping over to my phone, and I didn't know it. And I'd never seen that before because my work computer is on Monterey and it doesn't happen on Monterey. So I'm trying to figure out, I can hear you. I'm trying to figure out why you can't hear me. And it was because of this new continuity thing. I don't like when things take over and you don't know it. And that's exactly what was happening. So my question is, like I have a Time Machine drive that basically has 2 years worth of information on it. But I've been wondering, as the operating systems change and I put information or information goes onto Time Machine, can I still access that information that was, I want to say, created with a previous system?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay.
The only if it's your data, yes. System files, obviously not. That
Correct.
wouldn't be good.
Correct.
But yeah, your data should still be accessible. If you can't see it in Time Machine, you can always, if you're careful, go in and do it manually.
I've actually done that with Time Machine, and I know how. And I can. Yeah, you can see it. I have to tell you quickly, I actually took a file off of my Time Machine drive once, which is a no-no. And it took me 2 weeks to figure out how to make Time Machine work again. So yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Brilliant. Are we done?
Possibly.
I think we might be. So unless anybody has any more questions, First of all, can I just say thanks so much, Mark? Absolutely fascinating. And so, I mean, so brilliant to actually have a live demo involving a pint of water.
One of the few live demos that actually worked.
We must invite you back to set fire to something. I like the... No, thanks so much. And before I plow on and talk photography, because I suspect some people may decide to leave the meeting, two important things. One, please could I just trouble you to unmute yourself and just say thank you to Mark in the usual fashion.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much,
Mark.
Thanks,
Thanks
Mark.
ever so much, Mark.
Thank you,
Mark.
Thank you.
Nice one,
We'll have a
Mark.
gin and
Thank you,
tonic.
Mark.
Thanks very much.
Just be careful where
I
you
love the
put
way
it.
this is a Suffolk thing. Is I love the way that the words gin and tonic always kind of seep through that sort of. Also, I didn't mention at the beginning of the meeting, but I've written endlessly and will continue to write endlessly about it. But it's really, really important that if you plan to come to our live meeting in January, you must pre-book. I mean, we simply will not allow you in if you haven't already purchased a ticket, because in fairness to the people who have purchased a ticket, we'll be buying food for them. So there won't, we won't cater for people who just turn up expecting to come in and pay on the door. So please, 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 it's ridiculously inexpensive because the group is subsidizing the meeting. So the group is providing all of the food and drink. It's £3, for goodness sake, it's ridiculous. So please, please, you've seen my emails. I'll continue to send them out during December, but just get that £3 winging its way across to Paul as soon as possible. I know that we already have more than 30 members coming along for the event, which is fantastic. And I cannot wait to see you all. It's been a long time. We're all going to look visibly older. That's slightly disturbing. Right. Let's move on. Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
We, as you know, we normally finish our meeting at 9 o'clock, but I didn't want to let this drop because it would end up being like next February or something or March before one has the opportunity to talk about this. But Mark, could I trouble you to stop screen sharing? No, you're not screen sharing, are you? I just need to unspotlight you. Yeah, that's me. Hang on. I need to unspotlight you. That's better. No. So here we all are. So a month or two ago, I've been bouncing along to a very small mug in Arizona. It's lovely. There's about 15 members and it's very cozy and friendly and warm and fabulous. And one of their members, Ian Scott Parker, who is with us this evening, or was, I hope he still is, bought up this amazing piece of album creating software, which is an online service. And I just wanted very quickly to share it with you because since he shared it with us, I have been using it and using it and using it, and I am so impressed with it. And let me just share my screen. And close floating meeting controls.
Yeah.
And go to my album. So the address of this company is just myalbum.com, and it's Dutch. I don't know how long the company has been in existence. I know that many of you, like me, have relied on Mimeo, which is a plugin for Apple Photos to create albums. I've been producing albums professionally using Mimeo for forever, for probably 2 decades or something. What I love about this particular method of creating albums is that it's just ridiculously simple and beautiful. And it reminds me of 100 years ago, when Apple had programs like iWeb around. I mean, in the early days of Suffolk Mac User Group, without any experience at all, I built the original Suffolk Mug website using iWeb. And I was really, really proud when Mac Format, in an article about Mac user groups, actually said, if you want to see a really smart Mac user group website, go and visit Suffolk's. And I'd done it with a little bit of design sense, you know, but absolutely no technical knowledge at all, absolutely none. And it looked beautiful because as long as it was template based, so as long as you were putting good images into the template, you ended up with something that looked pretty magical. And that's exactly what I think about this particular website and its product. Now, they make books, which is how they make their money. And I'll come to that a bit later, but they also offer a free service. The free service is astonishing. I've used the book service, but only once so far, but the quality of the product was superb. And I'm just going to show you one, first of all, and then I'll just show you how easy it is to create. So I'm going to go to this National Parks album. Now, there are two ways to view these, and you can see down in the bottom right hand corner of the page we have a little slider with book view, and I'll talk about book view in a minute. The way that this works in its free service is that you basically import images. It does magic. You can edit the magic if you choose to. I've done a little, but I've found that it really didn't take very much because the software seems to be very intelligent. And once you've designed a book, you can share it with friends and family because basically it's a website. It's not a book at all. It's just a website. So up here, does anybody know what that symbol's called? I dare say it has got a name. That'll be a no then. So when I click this, it just says, how do you want to secure the album?
The share symbol.
Is that actually a share symbol?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, right. I had no idea. So share album, how do you want to secure the album? So you can make it public or you can make it private. If you make it private, only people who have signed, who have opened an account with, when I say opened an account, I mean, you know, username, password with my albums. So I'm inclined to use public. But when I hit continue now, it will simply create a website address that you can then share willy-nilly. And when your friends and family hit the button, so this is what they get. One of the first things that I discovered was it's smart enough to know that if you've created a panorama, there's a very good sense that in your book, you'd want it to cover an entire 2-page spread. And this shot of Bryce Canyon is a nice example. So all of these templates are filled remotely. I had no input at all, apart from just changing a few images around. Now, what makes this just goes on and on. Now, so let's stop at these fabulous images of Antelope Canyon. What is absolutely brilliant and breathtaking about this software is that we appear to be looking at a book, basically, and yet you see the plus sign in the cursor when I move it around. When I click on one of these images, I can see it full screen. It's just remarkable. And I click again to go back to the book. And I can click here and see these images full screen, etc., etc., etc. So I love that. The best sign I've ever come across. It's at the Grand Canyon. It's the only time on holiday in America I've actually ever lost my sense of humor. We got about a third of the way down and thought, no, this is enough. And then we turned around and went back, and about halfway back, I wanted to kill people. So you get the idea. So if you want to edit, if you want to edit, you just slide this little lever across. And now everything is live and editable. And I don't particularly want to mess up this collection, but let's just select a page. Let's just choose this page. If I wanted to lose an image, let's say I wanted to lose this image, all I had to do is select it and hit the delete button at the bottom right-hand corner. And the program will then reorganize the remaining images to fill the page. So it's very, very smart. It's very smart. It also, if you've got a page selected, so we've got this double page selected, down here will offer a number of variations, including text, if you want to add text. I'm just going to take it back to there. So that's in a nutshell, that is it. Now, next to the edit button, importantly, there's an add button. And I believe that Ian in Arizona, he's an English guy, but I think he's retired to Tucson. Ian was using this as a kind of device to get him out, really looking at his landscape on a daily basis. So he was going out every day for a walk and recording images with his phone, I imagine, and kind of training himself to look for unusual, interesting, and fascinating stuff that ordinarily you'd just take for granted. And he was using this book, a book, as a kind of diary. So each day he'd hit the add button, and then he'd hit photos and videos, and he would import 2 or 3 photos or whatever each day. So at the end of a month, he got an extremely big and beautiful collection of pictures. Now, you can even include videos, and just because I could, I've shoved 3 tiny video shots on the front of this album, which was a record of our visit. I was with 3 insane friends for 2 weeks in Walt Disney World. But just to illustrate how this works, if I just click on the play button.
Oh gosh.
So you can pop videos in wherever you want. Now, if you order a book, they do the cleverest of things, because they take a screen grab from the movie that appears in print, but they also include a QR code. And when you scan the QR code with your iPhone, you then watch the video on your phone. And that's from a hardback book, which I'd never come across that as a concept before. And I just think it's dazzling, absolutely dazzling. So how do you do it? Let's go back to the homepage. I'm going to start a new album here. It will ask me to give it a title. I have pre-prepared a little folder full of images of the show that I photographed at the Wolsey the day before yesterday. So it's Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, and it's New Wolsey Theatre, Ipswich. It gives you a choice of templates. One is classical and very kind of formal. I much prefer the adventure of the enriched choice, which offers different shapes and different colored pages and stuff. All I do then is choose photos, videos, find my folder, which I've already pre-prepared, select my images, hit the upload button, and try desperately to try and find something interesting to talk about while they're uploading.
Like John Sharman, do they have to be JPEGs? Or
I
they take
think,
what?
do you know, somebody asked me that question when I did this at Naples, and I forgot. I don't know then. I didn't know then, and I still don't. I haven't. I'll try it with. I'll bet it'll take TIFFs for sure. Whether it will take Photoshop files or not is another matter. I don't know, John. But it's something I will, I'll certainly experiment with, because I'm loving the experience of this album. So now it's doing its secret work, and so here we have our album.
Yeah.
So quick, so simple, so absolutely flipping gorgeous. And as I said, if you want to see an image in close up, you just tap on it and you see the full glorious shot. The Wolsey knows exactly how to cast dames. They always find the best looking chaps to to play dame. Not much else to say, really. You know, if I just click on this page, whoops, sorry. What am I doing? Oh no, I'm not editing. So if I just go into edit mode now, so here we've got our double page spread. Let's say I don't particularly like these circles. If I have the page selected, down here, I'm offered a number of alternative layouts. So I'm going to go with that one. And, you know, that's it really. And if I decided I didn't want this shot, so I'll just select this shot and hit the delete button. And it immediately reorganizes the remaining images to fill as much of the page as possible. So the way that this company makes its money is that it offers you the option to create books, and it offers a subscription service. And if you buy into the subscription service, which is, I think it's something like £4 a month or £5 a month, something, I can't remember. Oh, let's hit the upgrade button and just be sure. Oh, there you go. It's £5 a month. So if you're prepared to stump up £5 a month, unlimited albums, usage and storage. You can back up all of your original photos, full HD photos, unlimited video lengths, 10% photo book. I mean, I don't create enough books to make this worth spending money on, unfortunately. But I did, as I said earlier, I did order a book from them and the quality was absolutely first class. If I just go back to that National Parks book and hit the shopping trolley, so this is a 42-page book with 93 photos, and it's £29.95 bottom line. That is a soft cover book, but it's also available with a hardcover, which is a photo book with a laminated hardcover, which we're all, I think, used to seeing. So that's what, another £5. So it's not a great deal of money. Or you can go completely crazy and pay quite a lot of money and have a lay flat book. Now, when I was working as a wedding photographer, we provided these for our clients all the time. And they're absolutely beautiful because there's absolutely no curve. So you don't get any of this stuff. You just get an absolutely flat, beautiful layout. So if you particularly, if you've got a lot of double page spreads in the album, it's the go-to place. I'm really looking forward to seeing a lay flat album, and other side of Christmas fully expect to have one or two in the house. Crikey, that was a 10-minute tour. I hope that makes sense. But I was just so impressed by this that I really wanted to share it with you, because I just have a feeling that a number of colleagues and friends will be jumping in and you know, and having a play. I just want to go back to Goldilocks for a moment. I don't like this. I don't, it's not the right image for the cover. And also I don't like the layout. So just to illustrate how easy it is, all I've got to do is go to edit. I have my front page selected, and down here you can see I've got a number of variations. Actually, I'm going to go back to a very simple one, and I'm going to replace the, I think I'm going to replace this image. So I'm going to click on the image, come down here to, my library, and under the library tab, I can select any of the images in the album. I'm going to go for this one, I think. And it's as simple as that. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Yeah, there it is. So there we are, myalbum.com, and here endeth today's meeting.